Here we are at the beautiful St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church and Cemetery. Today, we'll be taking this fascinating walk tour of the church and cemetery grounds. This cemetery is home to the stories of Scarborough's earliest settlers, pioneers, and notable figures. We'll be following the original PDF walking tour format, stopping at each of the 34 points. At each stop, we'll see if we learn anything new about the people buried there. So, let's get started. Stop one on our tour is the church itself. Founded in 1818 with the current building here dating back to 1849. This is the oldest Presbyterian church in Toronto. The original was a simple wooden structure built back in 1819 on land donated by David and Mary Thomson, who were Scarborough's first European settlers. You can see here, this has been named a Scarborough historical site with a little plaque on the wall. And over top of the door here leading to the church, we have two faces staring down at me. Don't know if you can see it, but above the door they have a stone commemorating when it was built, 1849. Stop 2 is the Scarborough Centennial Memorial Library. It was built in 1896 and commemorated the 100th anniversary of the Scarborough Township opening of the first land grant way back in 1796, which was then settled by David and Mary Thomson in 1799. In 1980, the Scarborough Historical Society leased and restored it, along with the Sexton's house that we'll look at later. They used it as a display for artifacts, photos, and it earned an award of excellence for how well they restored it. Though in 2017, the lease was not renewed, and is now mainly used by storage by the church, though some are advocating for this whole building here to be moved down at Thompson Memorial Park, where the Kennedy barn now sits. You can see here on the library wall, they got another plaque saying that it's part of the Scarborough Historical Society. And this building here used to be used as an actual public library. And if we come along the side here, we can even see the door, public library. It would have been quite the thing back in the 1800s to come and view this with all its books and people visiting. Stop 3 is here sort of just basically in the parking lot. But this is a site where the two brothers, David and Andrew Farms, met. The land was granted to them way back in 1802 by King George III. Now we have this church and parking lots here. Lots have changed since 1802. Stop 4 is this cemetery monument here. It recognizes the Mississauga people as some of the original inhabitants of this area. It also here talks about the Indian Trail, where David Thomson, who was the first settler in Scarborough, came and built his house. Another plaque here might be hard to read, but it's all about the Thompson settlement. Stop 5 features Major Arthur Birch's grave. He served as a chaplain for the 74th Battalion in World War I. holding the rank of major. He was also a former minister in Orangeville and was part of the staff at Westminster Hall in Vancouver. His dad was also a retired major in the 2nd Dragoons, and he had 2 brothers. One of them was also a major, at the time commanded the 2nd Dragoons. But unfortunately, his brother, Lieutenant J.E. Birch, was killed in the African campaign, which of course was the Boer War. He was able to return from England with the Canadian Expeditionary Force in June 22nd, 1917. His obituary notes he was in his 72nd year and has suffered from a heart condition for several years, and he had only retired a few months ago before passing. The obituary notes that surviving him was his wife Gertrude, 2 daughters, Miss Ford and Miss Betty, and his sons Frank and Reverend M.E. Birch. Next, at stop 6, we have another Reverend, Dr. Harvey Carmichael. He died at age 74 in 1943 from a brief illness. 44 years in the ministry in Canada and US, and he retired in 1939. He was born in Spencerville, educated in Kempville High School. He ended up graduating in theology from Queen's University in 1897, when he also received his Master of Arts degree and was a gold medalist in philosophy. He received a PhD in religious education in 1922 from the Hartford School of Pedagogy in Hartford, Connecticut. It notes that surviving him is his wife, Adele Carmichael, daughter Miss W. Oldham, and his son, who is also a Reverend, Ralph Carmichael, his sister, Miss Lindsay, and 2 brothers, Dr. Andrew and Christopher Carmichael. Stop 7 here only mentions that it's children's graves. I couldn't find any more information. Obviously just that unfortunately they all died young. Stop 8 here is George Hawker. Another one where unfortunately I couldn't really find any more information on other than what the PDF file says. It says that he was a church sexton from 1931 to 1953, and he lived in the Sexton house with his family. Here in stop 9, we have Reverend James George. In July 1833, he moved to York, which is now Toronto, and was given charge of Scarborough. And within a year, he built up an active congregation. George stayed with his Scarborough congregation for 17 years, with only one interval, from October 1847 and May 1848, when he was stationed in Belleville. You might have noticed that this here is only a memorial. His actual burial ground is in Stratford, Ontario. Stop 10 is James G. Thomson. On May 25th, 1910, James celebrated his golden wedding on the Springfield farm. The paper here says that this celebration brought in 150 family and friends, and it tells stories of happy times, exploration, and building of a new life. Though James would pass away 7 years later. But this tour also mentions that James sold the right-of-way from McCowan Road to Church Street in 1886 for only $50. Here we have James Elliot, born June 2nd, 1773 in Scotland, and died April 11th, 1849 here in Scarborough. It's said that in 1802, James and his wife Janet were the first pioneer couple to marry here in Scarborough. It's said that he was a stonemason and worked with David Thomson, working on government parliament buildings down on Front Street. After they married, James and Janet moved near the Thomsons' settlement to own their own 100-acre lot just north of Shepherd, east of Brimley. Stop 12 is James A. Thomson. James here built the historic Springfield Farm in 1840, and it's still standing, located at 142 St. Andrews Road. That building is a 2.5-story farmhouse with a stone foundation, and it's the oldest known Scarborough brick dwelling. Today, it's a private home, so I'm not going to go and just stand and film in front of it, but if you ever drive by or have a chance, it's actually quite beautiful. It says that also the township's first public library, the one we looked at earlier, opened in 1834 with James here serving as its librarian. He died on October 28, 1884 at age 82. Andrew Thomson, he was born in 1752 and he died in 1823. Andrew is the brother of David and Archibald Thomson, and they are all Scottish settlers instrumental in Scarborough's foundation. He arrived here in Scarborough around 1796 as part of the Thomson family's pioneering wave. Helped by the Loyalists and the Crown land grants, Andrew, along with his brothers, were stonemasons who all worked on government buildings down in York. He would have participated in the development of the settlement, constructing mills and contributing land for the community structures. And this whole cemetery here lies on what was once Andrew's farm. Stop 14 here is Archibald Thomas, born in Scotland in 1749. By 1773, he migrated to New York and was farming with other Scots. As a loyalist during the American Revolution of 1775, he abandoned his land and served as a carpenter repairing forts and joined the King's Royal Regiment of New York in 1777 and worked with Captain Joseph Brant in 1778, escaping rebel capture. He served without pay for 7 years and received a lieutenant's commission. In 1781, he married Elizabeth Mackay in Quebec City. They had 12 children together. In 1796, he petitioned for land in Scarborough for his brothers, joining them by 1799, where he ran what is called a house of entertainment, milled, farmed, and served as a justice of peace. He acquired properties across Upper Canada, including Kingston, York, and Niagara. Recognized as a United Empire Loyalist, his family donated land for St. Andrew's Church, where he died on January 22nd, 1819, and Elizabeth, his wife, in 1817. Again, they could just be too faded, or I could just be walking right by them. But stop 15 here is 3 individuals that I couldn't find any more information on them other than what was said in the walking tour. It's just that they all died, all 3 of them died from cholera within 2 weeks of each other back in April 1844. Here we have here at stop 16, Agnes Thomson Muir. She was born 1837 and she died 1865. She married Alexander Muir around 1854 to 1858. It was sort of hard to track down the exact date, but they had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. She died pretty young, at age 28, while the family was living in Leslieville, and she was buried here in St. Andrew's Cemetery. Her early passing left Alexander a widower with 3 young children, though Alexander would remarry on November 21st, 1865 to Mary Alice Johnston, and would have 2 more children. Alexander, her husband, was also a notable Canadian songwriter, poet, soldier, and school headmaster. He is best known for composing the song Maple Leaf Forever in October 1867 to celebrate Canadian Confederation, which became an unofficial national anthem. So I'm pretty sure here this is what we're looking for. Again, the stone is hard to read and has seen better days. But this here in Stop 17 is John Muir. He was a Scottish-born schoolmaster in Scarborough. He was born July 5th, 1802 in Scotland. He was described as a robust man, accomplished and remembered for playing curling for a rink in Strathaven Parish. He married Catherine McDermott on September 19th, 1829. They were the parents of songwriter Alexander Muir, who we just recently talked about. He was the one that composed the Maple Leaf Forever. The family immigrated to Upper Canada in 1833, and John died in 1865, and his stone here was erected by his former students. Here we have Robert James Stobo. He was born in Scarborough, Ontario. He was the son of Lieutenant Stobo, who has served in defense against the Fenian raid. Robert Jr. here was one of 6 Scarborough boys who volunteered for service in the South African War, which we know as the Boer War. He joined but succumbed to typhoid fever at Hildeburg, Transvaal, South Africa, after a brief illness. The paper reported his death alongside 3 other Canadian fatalities from the same disease during the conflict. It says that he is buried in South Africa, but on May 26, 1902, this magnificent granite monument was unveiled in his memory here at St. Andrew's Cemetery. It was erected by local citizens to honor his service and sacrifice. The paper says that the event drew a large crowd, with St. Andrew's Choir rendering appropriate music and visits to other pioneer graves afterwards. So this location here in Stop 19, they call it Potter's Field. Now, a Potter's Field is normally a spot in a cemetery that's reserved for unclaimed bodies, the poor, unfortunately just for unwanted people in society. These are most likely all unmarked grave here, and there could be, dozens or even 100 people buried here, just unmarked, forgotten. So Stop 20 is basically in the middle of the cemetery here. This here is where the original church would have been built back in 1819. People of the time would have used it all the way until 1834, when the new church back there was built. There's nothing really for me to show you now. All traces of it is long gone. Stop 21, we have Robert Ray, and a bit of a tragic story. He and his wife arrived in Ontario from Scotland back in 1832 with their 4 young children. But unfortunately, 3 weeks after their arrival, Robert here was killed by a falling tree while helping his brother-in-law, Robert Hamilton, clear his family farm. The widow, Agnes, raised her 4 children alone, but eventually she was able to purchase 30 acres of her own land in Lambton County in southwestern Ontario. According to her death record, she is quoted of dying of old age at age 87 in 1878. Stop 22, we have William Knowles. He was born 1759 in England and migrated from New Jersey to Scarborough around 1803 with his wife and 7 children. Their 8th child was born in Grimsby as they traveled to Scarborough. It says that he purchased some land from a man named Jesse Ketchum, including horses, harnesses, and a wagon, but apparently when he got to his land, he found only a roofless log shanty, leading the family to literally live under the trees. As the township's first blacksmith, he established a smithy in Highland Creek area. It said that he planted one of the earliest orchards in the township, naming each tree after one of his children who helped clear the obstructing stumps. His wife cared, spun, and wove flax into blankets, linen, and cloth for the family. During the War of 1812, William served as a sergeant in the 3rd Regiment of York Militia. After the Battle of York, April 27, 1813, he surrendered to American forces to obtain a parole and was punished with 3 months of militia duty. He died on May 18, 1825, here in Scarborough. His wife died January 22, 1842, and the property passed to his eldest son Richard, who divided it with his brothers. Stop 23 is James McCowan. He was born 1773 in Scotland, and he married his wife Margaret in September 1813. After establishing himself as a coal master and later a farmer and cattle breeder in Scotland, he emigrated to Scarborough in 1833 with his wife and 8 children. But unfortunately, James and his son David died of cholera only a year later on August 28, 1834. And right next to him here, we have his son, who died the same day. Here in Stop 24, we have Stephen and his wife, and they have an interesting story that we'll get into here. Stephen was born 1783 in New Brunswick. He married Elizabeth around 1803, and during the War of 1812, he conveyed soldiers, stores, and ammunition from Kingston to Niagara, and carried dispatches from York to Whitby, and of course, vice versa, often swimming with his horse across the Rouge River. And Elizabeth, his wife, assisted in this role, mounting a fresh horse to carry dispatches from Fort York when Stephen arrived weary and wet, ensuring communication continued. They served as His Majesty's mail carriers for many years, with Stephen riding horseback from Whitby to Scarborough and Elizabeth from Scarborough to Toronto. As you can imagine, adventures were frequently encountered. Once, when a bridge spanning the Don River had been washed away, Elizabeth continued her journey with her horse swimming in the swollen river. In April 1813, during the American sack of York, U.S. soldiers ransacked their home and destroyed household items, including valuable dishes brought from Montreal. Elizabeth defied the soldiers, protesting under threat of violence. The couple had 10 children together, but Stephen died on April 16, 1842, at the age of 59. After his death, Elizabeth remarried twice. First to a man named William Lawrence on July 6, 1844 in Toronto, and a second to a man named John Darby in 1863, who happened to be 15 years her junior. In her later years, she lived on the farm in Scarborough with her son Adna and his family. Elizabeth died in 1868 at 80 years old and was buried with her husband Stephen and their son Stephen Jr. here in the cemetery with other pioneers like David Thomson. Here is the memorial to David and Mary Thomson. This here is Stop 25, and they immigrated from Scotland, arriving in Upper Canada in 1796. They first lived in Newark, which is now Niagara-on-the-Lake, and then York, where David worked as a stonemason on early government structures. Seeking a healthier and more productive land, Thomsons settled in Scarborough in 1799. David was officially granted 200 acres in the township for being the first settler to build and reside here. Their move marked the beginning of a permanent European settlement in the area, and David donated 1 acre of his farm in 1818 for the establishment of the church here. This became St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church and Cemetery, where both he and Mary would later be buried. He built the first school, church, tavern, and led community efforts such as building sawmills and local defenses during the War of 1812, establishing the foundation of the Thomson settlement. Mary Thomson earned the title of the Mother of Scarborough, celebrated for her resilience in raising 11 children in frontier conditions and helping shape the community. Behind me is the Thomson Memorial Park. It now houses their original homestead, and it has the Scarborough Historical Museum and several other pioneer-era buildings. The park down there preserves the memory of the Thomson and all the early pioneers in Scarborough. Unfortunately here, there's another grave I could not find. The tour says that he should be right in front of his parents there, David and Mary, but unfortunately, I'm not able to find him. But Stop 26 is William D. Thomas. He was born April 4th, 1802, right here in Scarborough, and he died May 3rd, 1877, at age 75. He was known as Stonehouse Willie, and he earned that name by building a notable fieldstone house in 1848 of the corner of Church and Brimley Road. This structure remains there to this day, but again, it's a private residence, so I'm not going to go film in front of it. But it's a beautiful house, and it's nice knowing that these little things have stood the test of time. It's hard for me to tell for sure, but judging by the walking tour map, this should be Stop 27 and John Walton. And John here was born March 15th, 1799 in England, and he died on May 11th, 1877, right here in Scarborough at the age of 78. His wife Mary died on December 9th, 1879, also in Scarborough. The couple married on December 11th, 1823. Their marriage formed a family bridge between the Walton and Thomson lineages. They raised a large family with 10 kids, and the walking tour notes that Mary would often have to walk 10 miles, that's 16 kilometers, from their farm here in Scarborough to sell butter and eggs back in town. Stop 28 is Joseph Walton, born 1810, died 1888, and he was part of Scarborough's pioneering farming community. And, as I'm sure you've noticed, his gravestone is shaped like a tree trunk. This could symbolize a few different things. It could be a life cut short, even if the person lived into an old age, or the person had a connection to nature and pioneering life. Markers like this symbolize a connection to the land and to the hard pioneering life of clearing forests and building farms. Or maybe it had an individual meaning. Families would often select these stones to emphasize strength, steadfastness, and roots in the community. So, our friend Joseph Walton, he was part of the pioneering farming community, and the tree trunk headstone fits him. His generation literally cleared the forests of Scarborough to make farmland. So his tree stone may represent both the end of his life and a tribute to his role in transforming the wilderness into a community. This here is Stop 29 and Richard Severus Thomson. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything on Richard here. Just that the tour says he was a 5th generation to live on the Thomson homestead. Also, that he was a descendant of George Brown, who was a father of Confederation and founder of the Toronto newspaper, The Globe. You probably heard of George Brown. He was an important figure in Canadian history who was shot in the leg at his office after one of his employees was fired and came back with a gun. George ended up dying a few days later, and the man who shot him was charged and hanged. Stop 30 features Reverend James Bain, born 1802 and died 1885. He served as the 3rd minister here at St. Andrews from 1853 to 1874. Originally from Scotland, he was formerly a minister before immigrating to Canada. He was actively involved in community events and charitable causes. He also addressed an audience at a grand temperance demonstration in Scarborough on July 3, 1856, where the evils of intemperance were vividly portrayed, and the anti-liquor law was advocated. He died on December 9, 1885, in his 84th year. So I couldn't find Stop 31 for William Blakely, but I did find the stone here for some of his family members. William was born 1848, a native of Essex County, England, and he immigrated to Canada in 1870. He served as a caretaker here at St. Andrews for 33 years, and he died on July 27, 1939. Stop 32 here, I couldn't find anything other than what it says on the tour. The Sellers' children's graves, and they all died of typhus within 9 days of each other in 1886. Stop 33, we have George Scott. And George was born in 1795 in Scotland. In 1829, he purchased an 80-hectare lot in Scarborough, extending from Ellesmere to Shepherd Avenue. After clearing the land, he developed one of the most prosperous farms in the township. In 1841, he built a large 2-story stone house using stones gathered from the fields, now known as Scott House, at 520 Progress Avenue. When the Scarborough Agricultural Society was formed in 1844, George became a regular supporter of its annual fairs, winning numerous prizes for his fine sheep, horses, pig, and grain, as evidenced by all the awards here you can see in the paper that he got. His wife likewise won prizes for her excellent cheese. He had at least 2 children who died young. Helen Scott, who died September 24th, 1841, aged 4 years and 5 months. And John Scott died September 22nd, 1841, aged 2 years and 7 months. After George's death in 1865, members of his family continued to live on the farm until 1943. In 1978, the old Scott House was renovated, but was able to preserve its heritage. The building was erected in 1841 and is designated a historical site, and is currently being used to house the Piper Arms Pub restaurant. This here is the old Sexton house, and I've sort of gotten conflicting reports whether someone currently lives in there now or not, so I won't be filming it long. But this was constructed in 1883. So that's the end of our tour. We were able to find most of the graves, but some of them, they're really faded, they're old, they're hard to find. But I hope we all learned something today about the individuals buried here and the early pioneering life that many of these individuals lived. So if you enjoyed this content, stick around and there'll be more to come.